Hello and welcome back. We are going to talk today about something that I know many of you are going to hate the sound of. We're going to talk about stopping. Specifically, we're going to talk about quitting and why knowing when to quit is an art. It is also one of your biggest superpowers when you master it. And ultimately, what we see is that high performers are great at starting things. We're great at starting new exercise trends, new businesses, new projects, new goals. But the skill that really no one talks about is honestly the one that matters most. It's knowing when to stop. It's knowing when the cost is too high, knowing when there's misalignment, knowing when there's sunk costs, that it's never going to reap the benefits or the rewards or the end goal or outcome that you had hoped. And that's okay. And so in this episode, we're going to explore the psychology of this. We're going to explore the strategy of how to end things in a healthy way. We're going to look at what it looks and feels like to recognize when something has run its course. And we're going to just get to the root of why letting go is often so much harder than holding on. And again, I know this is going to be uncomfortable. We celebrate starting. We worship the finish, the goal line, the proverbial finish line, be it in real life or in a finish line that we've set for ourselves. But nobody teaches us the skill that really can change everything, which is the skill of knowing when to stop. And so amidst all of the celebration, all of the sexiness of doing the thing and digging in and grinding and the pursuit, there is an art and a skill of knowing when it's time to leave the thing. Being honest with ourselves, cutting our losses, knowing that the pursuit of that thing taught us something that we wouldn't have learned otherwise, and the process in and of itself was valuable, but we're going to move on. The thing that we were chasing no longer serves us. And so with that in mind, let's get into it. Let's talk about, I think, one of the biggest components or aspects of what keeps us from stopping, what keeps us from calling it quits. And that is that we have what I've called the sunk cost fallacy, right? The fallacy, or the idea that we can't stop because we've invested so much, right? It goes something like this: I've already invested so much. How can I just walk away now? Right? Have you ever done that before? Have you ever been in a situation where you stay in the thing because you tell yourself that if you walk away now, you've lost too much, right? It's sunk cost. So the shift here, just out of the gate, is that we have to recognize that the inherent value of the pursuit of some things is valuable enough. That just going down that road, engaging in that process, learning those skills, changing our mindset, all of the things that we get in the pursuit of something, those have inherent value. And so often in these scenarios, when it is time to stop, and we do need to let go, the value of those skills and that mindset and all of those things is actually far greater than the value of the thing that we would get at the end anyway, right? We need to recognize that there is an inherent transaction there that does have value. And so we know from research that we as humans, we overweight the past and we undervalue what it costs in the future. So let me break that down. We overweight the effort that we've put in the past, meaning that we ascribe a greater amount of value to the effort of what it took to get us to where we're at than the cost of what it's going to take us to get into the future self, to get into the future version of what we want, to continue to pursue our goals. And I think that that's a really, really powerful equation. Right? I'm going to say that again. We overweight the effort that we put in to get us to where we're at, and we undervalue the future cost. So I think when we recognize that, it does help change the relationship between how we think about this sunk cost fallacy. Meaning that if we recognize that we're probably giving too much weight to the effort that we put in to get us right to where we're at right now, and we're not valuing enough the cost that's going to be required to keep it going, to keep ourselves going, to keep this dream alive, to keep the effort going, whatever it is. The other part of this is we have a tremendous amount of identity wrapped up in these things, right? We attach our identity to this pursuit. We confuse stopping with quitting, right? Now, I offered both of those up earlier because I did want to intentionally introduce language that I think all of us can connect with, right? We think about stopping something, we think about quitting, we think about throwing in the towel. But ultimately, there is a difference, and we confuse stopping with quitting. Stopping means that we are recognizing that it's no longer in alignment. We're recognizing that to continue to pursue this thing is actually going to cost more than what it took to get here. Quitting is making a decision that is out of alignment with our value set. Right? Quitting is giving up because we're no longer acting in accordance to what we say that we want. And there's a very distinct difference there. And so what we believe when it comes to our identity is that if I stop, what does that say about me? Right? That's what we tell ourselves. And that's how we wrap our identity in with stopping, is that we tell ourselves, well, if I stop now, what does that say? What does it say about me, both to myself and what are others going to think? To that end, as it relates to others, there is a tremendous amount of social and cultural pressure when it comes to stopping. The narrative goes like this: quitting equals failure. Persistence equals virtue. We have made it extremely virtuous in our society in present day to persist. I've talked about this at length on this podcast: the persistence, the grind, the hustle. You can use whatever adjective you want, but the fact of the matter is, as it relates to this conversation, we have placed a tremendous amount of value on persistence, and we have ascribed a negative connotation to quitting. We said, well, if you quit, that equals failure. But what we have to recognize is that if we persist and it's out of alignment with what's truly best for us, be it our goals in the business realm, be it our goals in our health realm, be it our goals in our personal development realm, if we persist outside of alignment with what's best for us, ultimately it equals self-destruction. Ultimately, it will not lead us in the direction of the things that we want. The other piece of this, on top of social and cultural pressure, is that there is a void here. And I actually talked about this in the last podcast episode. So we talked about a bit of an identity crisis that happens when we're in this liminal space. But it applies here as well, is that when we stop, it creates space that we didn't have before. And that space feels very scary, right? We get very uncomfortable when there is a disconnect between how we show up in the world and the things that we say that we want. Right? What I mean by that is if how we've shown up is that I'm persistent, I'm in it, I'm sticking with it, I won't quit. And then we make a decision that puts us in a physical environment that is different than that, meaning we have more space, that becomes very scary and it makes us very uneasy. What we fear in that space is that we fear emptiness. We fear the unknown. What's next? I don't know. I'm not familiar with this space. We fear being without a label or a role. Like I said, so easy now to ascribe our identity or align our personal identity with someone who just persists, right? And there's nothing wrong with being aligned with someone who is dedicated and who works hard and who is unwilling to give up on their dreams. The caveat that I'm offering is that you do not want to be, or it is ultimately not productive for you to be an individual who is aligned with staying in something, but even though you know it's wrong. right? Sticking with something just because you started it is not virtuous. But again, we have a lot wrapped up in that label or that role, and so it's hard to disconnect from that. But what I'd like to really offer up in summation is that sometimes holding on is actually quitting. Sometimes holding on is the real quitting. What you're doing is you're quitting on yourself. You're sabotaging yourself. You're not allowing yourself to run at what's really valuable, what you really want, because you're so dedicated, you're so committed to sticking with this thing for reasons that are not actually truthful, right? For reasons like what I just talked about, social and cultural pressure, identity alignment, right? Fear. These are not reasons to stick with something. They feel real, but when we're honest, that's really what's hampering us. That's really what's keeping us down. And so I'd offer that sometimes holding on is the real quitting. It's quitting on ourselves because it is what gets in our way from actually pursuing things that we care about. So let's talk about the cost of not stopping. We know that inherently there is a cost. Now, I recognize that it is hard to see the forest for the trees here. When you're in it and you've made that commitment and you believe at least in why you started the thing, it is hard to see the cost, but we know that there is one. First and foremost, there is an emotional cost. Now, for those of us that are high performers and drivers, emotional cost might not feel like the one that is most impactful, but I promise you that it has a very, very real impact, even if it's not the one that we want to recognize or recognize first. Firstly, from an emotional cost perspective, we're going to have resentment. We're going to know deep down inside that what we're pursuing, what we're putting all this time and energy and effort and resources into, is not truly taking us where we want to go. If we're honest, and we know that, if you've been in this position, if you've wrestled with any of this, you know, if you're on the other side of it, you know that upon reflection, you had those moments where you're like, this isn't it. But I'm too stubborn. I'm too hard-headed. I'm worried about what other people are going to think. I'm worried about letting people down. I'm worried about whatever it is. And so I'm going to keep going. It's easier to stay in this brutality than it is to stop. But there is a resentment there because you know there's a cost. Next, you're going to get anxious. There's an anxiety because you know that it's not right. You know that it's costing you too much. You know that it's causing you to miss opportunities elsewhere in your life. And so that makes you anxious. Next, you can get numb to the entire experience. All right, whatever. Doesn't matter. I don't care. What'll be, what'll be. So a numbness there is going to really dampen any opportunity that you have on the other side of that. And next is you're going to see a major stagnation in your creativity. Now, even if you don't see yourself as a creative person, it takes creativity to move through the world. Specifically in high-performing spaces, you have to be creative about how you navigate your time, your resources, your energy deployment, your conversations with others, who you bring in around you, what your support network is. And so that creativity gets dampened because there is this very real emotional cost. Everything just gets brought down. There's a sharpness there that gets lost. Next is that there's a very real performance cost. So we see, firstly, diminishing returns. Things that aren't working aren't going to deliver results. We're not going to see an ROI on our effort. Specifically, there's going to be an outsized input for the output. We're going to work way hard, and we're not going to get as much. Because again, it's not working. We need to stop. And so you see diminished returns. We certainly suffer from decision fatigue. So again, there's this dampening of our response, right? We start to care less. Everything starts to stack. It feels like it's not working. We're putting in more and more effort, but nothing's coming out the other side, or at least not the results that we wanted or we had hoped. So these decisions start to stack up. The fatigue sets in. And then from a performance perspective, really where that kind of flushes out at the end is we start to give a half-hearted effort. Well, if this thing's not going to love me back, then I'm not going to love it. If I'm not going to see the returns, we can only put up with heartbreak for so long. I don't care how disciplined you are. There is a point at which you will recognize that the input is not worth the output, and you will back off of the input. You will diminish your effort because you can see the writing on the wall. Then we have an opportunity cost. Staying in the wrong role, in the wrong habit, in the wrong system, it erodes trust. It erodes trust with yourself, and it erodes trust with others. And this is where we really see not only an opportunity cost, but also a relationship cost. And what I mean by that, or to put a little bit more color on that, is that every yes that we provide, every yes that you keep saying that is out of alignment steals from the opportunities that you have in the future. Right? If you say yes to the wrong thing, you're saying no to the right thing. All right? I think that's a powerful statement. We know that we have a finite amount of energy, we have a finite amount of resources, we have a finite amount of opportunities. Right? We can't just slot everything in all the time. And so saying yes to the wrong thing robs you from the ability to, one, see the right thing, and then to take advantage of it when it is made available to you. And that goes with relationships as well. We know that, again, when we stay in these wrong situations, these wrong habits, these roles, these systems, it erodes trust. And it erodes your ability to take advantage of opportunities that are afforded to you. Examples of that are athletes refusing to adjust their training. They start to detrain. You won't just continue to push past and move through a broken system to then break through on the other side to the results that you want. You will detrain, you will regress, you'll get hurt. The list goes on. There is no version of that ends up working for an individual who just pushes through when something isn't working. We have the business owner, the entrepreneur who clings to something, a piece of their business that's no longer aligned, a client, a service, an approach, a team member, because it's worked before. They've sunk so much into this thing, right? This happens all the time. The entrepreneurial journey is one that is heavily tied to emotion. Entrepreneurs bleed for their companies. They give everything. And so when it is time to stop, it is very hard to do that because it feels very, very personal. But I'm here to tell you, recognizing that early is a superpower. And then in ourselves, if we stay in a chapter too long, then the cost just becomes inordinately high. Right? So the relationship with ourselves. Again, we're shortchanging our opportunities. We're not turning the page. And so we never get to see our full potential because we're too stuck in where we're at right now. And what I like to say is, if you don't choose your endings, they'll choose you. If you don't become very clear on when the endpoint of critical aspects of things in your life happen, then they'll happen to you. It'll be chosen for you. And that's a much less comfortable place to be than being methodical, being clear around when it's time to stop a thing. So what are signs that it's time to stop? We've talked about what this looks and feels like. Hopefully, at this point, you feel very clear. You can see and feel yourself in these scenarios. We have all had them. This should connect with every single person listening because this is the human condition. It's that sunk cost fallacy. We think that we've invested too much and so we can't quit. And we paint that as a picture of commitment and virtue and discipline. And that is a false narrative in these particular situations. So, in an effort to help you recognize what this looks like earlier so that you don't get into those situations, so that you don't forfeit your full potential or the opportunities that are going to be afforded to you, let's talk about what the signs are that it's time to stop. Firstly, it is, and I think this one is it's hard to see in real time because when you are someone who is hyper disciplined, you don't need motivation to act. But what this feels like is that the light goes out. You don't dread the thing that you're doing. You just don't feel anything. It's more of an indifference than a dislike. And the reason that I preface that with this kind of discipline conundrum is that can happen a lot. People that are driven, that are focused on things outside of small short-term wins, you can sit in that space for a long time. So I want you just to be really honest with yourself. If you're wrestling with that with yourself in things that you're working on or seasons that you're in, what does that really mean? Again, you don't dread it, but you just don't feel anything. You don't necessarily dislike it, but you're just indifferent. You'll show up, you'll go through the motions, you'll put in whatever effort's required, but is that really it? Next is you have to push yourself to care. So again, we're talking about signs that it's time to stop. You can execute, but you're just not connected to it. Again, this really ties into what I prefaced the latter point with, is that there's this just disconnect. You'll do it. And I recognize that. I know that so many of you listening are saying, it doesn't matter about if I'm connected to it. I don't care. I'll just do the work no matter what. 100%. I get that. And there are times when that can be a valuable skill. What I want you to recognize is that equally as valuable is knowing when to stop, so that you can move to the thing that you can put that level of commitment, that level of discipline, that level of care, that level of drive into something that's actually going to yield results. So the second piece is you just have to push yourself to care. You can execute, but you're not connected to it. So again, I want you to stop and pause there. Then the return on the energy that you get from the thing is negative. So it's not hard, it's not challenging, but it drains you in a way that feels misaligned. It drains you in a way where you say, that wasn't overly stressful. That wasn't particularly hard, but I just feel drained. I feel run down. I feel exhausted. I feel brain dead. And I don't know why, because the work shouldn't have yielded those results. But here I am. Certainly, if you start to feel that way day after week, I really want you to check yourself. Then you start to rationalize instead of recommitting. So I want you to hear yourself in this. Certainly, I've been guilty of this. I just need to try harder. So it's not the thing. It's not the project. It's not the work. It's that it's me. If I just try harder, if I double down, if I work more, if I commit even more, then I'll probably get that spark back. Then you say, if I can just get through this next phase, it's just this season. We just push. It sucks now, but it's just right now. Again, if that keeps recurring, then I want you to check yourself. You're bargaining with yourself. You're talking yourself out of what you know is true, which is that it might be time to stop, but you're bargaining with yourself. Then you know that the future you doesn't want this version of your life. So you sit with the question that sounds something like this. You sit with the question that says, does the person I'm becoming really want this? Is the thing that I'm working for really valuable? Do I truly want what I've said is on the other side of this thing? And you know that the future you might actually not want it. So your future self is already telling you what to end. You just might not be listening. Right? We're really good at being in tune with what we need. We just shut that down a lot. And I'm not trying to get woo-woo or overly existential, but there is an honesty there that if we just truly sit with that, I do think that we know what the answer is. We just shut that down because the narrative is we're high drivers, we're performers. I can do work that nobody else can do. I can sit in this uncomfortable scenario, this uncomfortable season. I can sit with this pain. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And again, if you're saying yes to the wrong thing, you're saying no to the right thing. That's the problem. So let's talk about how to end things. We just talked about the signs of when it might be time to end something. If you've recognized that, if you said, okay, I feel that, then how do we start to unravel this? How do we end things well? This is the caveat here. You can shut it down. You can burn it to the ground. I'd like to offer up that there is an opportunity to end things well, to stop something well. First thing you're going to do is you're going to name it. You're going to say the truth out loud. This is no longer aligned. This is costing me more than it's giving me. You're just going to say it. And you're going to just sit with that. I would encourage you to write that down. Name the truth of the thing. Again, this is no longer aligned. This isn't working for me. This is not who I want to be. This is costing me more than it's giving. There's never going to be an ROI if I continue down this path. Whatever it is, any and all of those things, write it down. Then, this is where it gets really good, because the only time that stopping something is not valuable is if we didn't learn from it. So the difference I would offer up between stopping and quitting is that stopping allows us an opportunity to learn. Quitting shuts that down. So if you want to strategically stop something instead of being a quitter, here's what I'm going to invite you to do. Next is you're going to extract the lesson. You're going to ask yourself, what did this chapter teach me that I needed to learn? And again, I would encourage you to write that down and sit with that and write down as much as you need. I promise you it's more than one thing. It taught you patience. It taught you clarity. It taught you to ask yourself challenging questions. It taught you skills. It taught you a lot of things. So I want you to ask yourself, what did this chapter teach me that I needed to learn? This is the most valuable thing. If you're clear about what it taught you, and then I would even take it a step further and extract out what is the value of that thing? How valuable is that going to be when I deploy that in the next chapter of my life? In the next thing that I'm going to pursue, you will recognize that there's actually not a cost, right? That stopping was the best decision, because everything that you're going to be able to roll into that next experience is going to be inordinately more valuable than if you would have continued to force the thing that you were working on right now. So, step 2, extract the lesson. That is what's going to make this valuable, right? Is the difference between stopping and quitting. Next is we're going to do a bit of a closing ritual. So, endings need structure. And there's a few ways to do this, whatever way resonates with you. One of the ways that can work is you can write a closing letter. Write a closing letter that you might, even if you don't send it out, send it to your employees, send it to your board, send it to your coach, send it to a team, send it to your spouse, a partner, a friend. Write a closing letter. And again, if you don't need to send it out, that's okay. Now, this actually might be a tactical step, but it's cathartic to write this closing letter. And what this closing letter does is it outlines why it's best, what you've recognized. You're going to pull in some of the lessons that you learned. You're going to pull in some of the realizations. And you're going to communicate why you're doing this with a level of clarity that helps you see what going forward actually looks and sounds like. Next is you can take a symbolic action. So again, you can pick and choose from these. You don't have to do all of them. Another way that can be expressed in terms of a closing ritual is you can take one symbolic action. That can look like any number of things, right? You can change a workflow, right? You could shut down an email account. You could shut down a website. You could send a final letter to the client that you were working with that's no longer in alignment, right? Take an action. Take an action that provides a level of finality that otherwise wouldn't have existed. Then you can have a final check-in or a debrief if there are people involved. Hey, this is the last one. Call it out. This is the last time we're going to talk about this thing. We're going to debrief. We're going to walk through what we learned. We're going to get really clear on the takeaways, the value that brings, and then we're shutting this thing down. And we're going to parlay everything that we've learned, everything that we've talked about in this debrief. We're going to parlay that into the next thing, and I promise you we'll be better for it. And then you can share gratitude with the people involved. Hey, I want to thank you for helping me see this thing to the point in which I got it. I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for pushing me on the days I didn't feel like being pushed. I want to thank you for bringing ideas to the table. All of that got me to this point, and it provided me the clarity I need to know that it's time to stop. So any of those pieces, any of those that work for you, and you can pull from multiple if that's helpful. Again, some of them are tactical. Some of them are going to be just for you. But you're going to set a closing ritual. Then once you do that, you're going to create a bridge. So we're not going to sit in this void. Again, the void is scary. I talked about that earlier. That's one of the things that keeps us from actually making the decision to stop, is that we're scared of the space between. So we're going to work to create a bridge. We're going to fill the space intentionally. We're not just going to stop and then sit. You're going to ask yourself, what am I making room for? Once you've done everything else, again, you've gotten clear on what the steps are, what's needed, what you've learned, how to communicate, then you're going to ask yourself, what am I making room for? And you're going to start to think about how to leverage what you learned. You're going to start to think about how to leverage that experience so that you're not stuck in that void. I'm not saying you have to start the next thing the next day, but start to craft a plan. Start to visualize what that could be. What are the opportunities? What can I do? What can I fill my time and space with? So you're going to ask yourself, what am I making room for? This thing is gone. What can I do now, given everything that I learned? Then you're going to communicate clearly. This is the summation. This is the biggest part. It's also the part that most people mess up. We come up with all these ideas, we do this work, and then we don't communicate it. We're not clear to ourselves, we're not clear to others, and so it drags on out in space because no one knows what actually happened, and we actually haven't been clear with ourselves, and so we're in limbo. So you're going to communicate this clearly in relationships, in business, with your coaches, whoever, with your ecosystem, with your sphere of influence. Right? Hopefully by this point, you've gotten clear with yourself. So that's done. You've communicated clearly because you've worked through what it looks like to end things well. But now you need to communicate with others. All the relationships involved, business partners, again, coaches, whomever. Clear, honest. You're not going to give explanations. You don't need to talk yourself out of it. You also need to talk yourself into it, and it's not your responsibility to talk others into it as well. It was time to stop. It's no longer serving you. Done. So clear, honest, no explanations, no blame. It's not anyone's fault that it needed to stop. It's not yours or other people. It's not circumstances. It's not this. It's not that. It's not external things that you can't control. It just needed to stop. And then with that, there's not going to be any drama. The dramatic aspect that can arise is one of the things that keeps us from stopping. When you communicate clearly, concisely, with a clear bridge, you're not stuck in the void, that gets rid of the drama. Because you're not quitting, You're stopping so that you can leverage those experiences to do something else. That's nothing but opportunity. That's an opportunity-based conversation. It's opportunity-based communication. It's not fear-based and it's not scarcity-based. That's a very different way to communicate. So I want you to get very clear on that. So here's a few things I want you to think about. I'm going to leave you with just a few kind of reflection opportunities. And I hope these are helpful. The goal here is that you can recognize if this is somewhere you are at, if you need to stop something. Also, I want you to see how this is manifested in your life before so that you can get ahead of it in the future. And so what these reflection prompts can sound like. And again, if they're helpful, feel free to deploy them. Feel free to tweak the language. They're here for you to use. What am I holding on to out of habit, not alignment? So the first reflection prompt is, what am I holding on to that's just habitual? It's not really aligned, I'm just used to doing it. Next is, where am I bargaining with myself instead of being honest? We talked about that. This bargaining piece is what gets us in the most trouble. We convince ourselves that because of the narrative that we've created around this thing, we've convinced ourselves that it's important, that it's valuable. You need to stay with it. It's just a season. It's just all the things we talked about. I want you to be honest. I want you to ask yourself, where am I bargaining with myself instead of being honest? Next is, what ending would create the most space? You could also use the word peace in my life right now. What ending would create the most space or peace in my life right now? Again, be honest. Don't bargain. And this is just an opportunity for reflection. There might not need to be anything that comes from asking yourself these questions, but the prompts are good. It's good to put stopgaps in place that allow us to reflect so that we can catch ourselves before we get too deep. Lastly, if I stop this, what would open up? If I stop pursuing this, what opportunities would arise? What would open up? So I want to invite you to use those prompts. Ask yourself those from time to time. Run through them right now. Use language that resonates with you. Try on what works and what doesn't. And just use them as an opportunity to check yourself. Specifically when you're deep in a thing, when you're super committed, when you feel like you're all in. That's a beautiful place to be. But it's in that experience that we get stuck. It's in that experience that we bargain with ourselves. We convince ourselves that it really is working. It really is worth it. The effort is yielding the results that I wanted. We tell ourselves, we rewrite the narrative as we're going to fit the reality that we're living. And so I want you to just use those prompts. Ask yourself, is it working or isn't it? Be honest. Don't bargain. Again, no drama, no exceptions, just clarity. And if you're in a place where you recognize something that you can turn the corner on, that you can stop, I'd love for you to let us know. You can find us at enduranceMinded.com and let us know, what's the one thing you're ready to stop? All right, I really want to invite you. You can also send us a DM. You can find me on Instagram, taylor.j.thomas. DM me. Let me know, what's the one thing you're ready to stop? You can find us at EnduranceMinded.com. Scroll to the bottom. Drop us a message there. I'd love to hear from you. I hope this helps. As always, rate, subscribe, and share this podcast with a friend. You can rate it on your favorite platform. You can subscribe and be alerted. New episodes every other Tuesday. We're excited to close out the year strong. We got lots of great content lined up for 26. Can't wait to show up for our entire community, continue to provide value, continue to help you flatten the learning curve, continue to help you recognize what your full potential is and how you can take full advantage of it. So again, rate, subscribe, share this episode or one that you liked with a friend. It would mean the world to me. And until then, I'll see you next time on Endurance Minded.